Man, there is no shortage of news happening out of Jeff City. Of course, they're heading down the home stretch for the Missouri legislative session, and no one knows the inner workings of that town than our next guest. Scott Faughn of Missouri Times is here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Scott, let's start off with tax cuts. I want to get the Chiefs, Royals, drama, some other things, but I keep hearing that tax cuts might happen. Now they might not happen. Are tax cuts happening in Jeff City this session?
Well, they have triggers set up, so tax cuts are going to happen whether or not a bill's passed or not. Previous legislation is set in course of things. When revenue goes up, they lower the income tax a little bit. So that's going to happen. As far as the income tax, another income tax cut to trigger more, I don't know this year. I think what's likely to happen if you see a tax cut is a capital gains tax cut. And I'll tell you why. I mean, we've went from 6%, we're on the road to 4%, and let's be honest, nothing in Missouri has gotten better. There is nothing in this state government producing above the national average, not population, not GDP. The only thing, honestly, is the University of Missouri system. That is producing well and above the national average in most things. But I think there's some folks that are starting to ask the question, we went from 6 to 4, what good has happened? Now, what plan do you have to implement all the way 100% before you see any results? So there's some folks question that, but there's a capital gains tax cut to where right now a lot of folks would see it on real estate. Like if you buy a house, you have to keep it for 2 years, or you pay capital gains. They want to cut the state capital gains part of that. It's an interesting way to directly spur economic growth. That maybe that's a way you start to see how you make this state grow again. Because I do think, Mike Keogh's going to take this state to zero income tax, I think, at some point in the next 7 years. I just think that at some point you have to ask, okay, when do we see benefit, and what does that look like? And again, go back to when is the first sign of benefit from that? Because I'm a tax cut guy, I always have been. But I do think I'm a practical guy. I mean, where are the benefits, and when if they're not here now, when do we see them?
Yeah, and they have been. You're right. There are triggers in place to cut income taxes incrementally when they hit X amount of revenue, but we'll have to see how that plays out. Now, I want to ask you, too, there was some drama late last week. The lieutenant governor of Missouri, his name is David Wassinger, and the reality is most people around the state of Missouri could not pick the lieutenant governor out of a lineup, but he made some noise last week when he sparked a bit of a fight with Senate leadership, basically calling for rules changes, wanting to play a bigger role in how the Missouri Senate operates. It's never been clear to me what exactly the lieutenant governor does. So what's the goal here from Wassinger, and is there anything there?
Well, the goal of every lieutenant governor is to wake up in the morning, call over to the mansion, and ask Sherry Childs if the governor's alive today. And if he is, their schedule's pretty free and opened up, right? Similar to a vice president. I mean, there's really nothing the vice president does except make sure the president's alive. If the president's alive that day, well, I mean, he can pretty much what he wants. David Wassinger has one constitutionally mandated job, is to preside over the Missouri State Senate. His office, what started this was his office got a budget cut. They cut an FTE, and they cut $80,000 out of his budget. It's the smallest statewide office budget because they don't do a lot, frankly.
Now, wait, is that a Republican being hypocritical, saying we need to spend less, and then when their office gets cut, they're like, whoa, not my office?
I think that's exactly what's happening here. And he may have a very logical reason to say why he needs that extra employee and what they do. I have no idea. But this, in all honesty, started when the Senate, the House kept his budget the same. The Senate cut his budget. And he's not happy about it. And so then they also cut Denny Hoskins' budget a great deal. And so one of the
he's the Secretary of State.
Senators are wanting to add those. Yes, a group of senators was wanting to add money back to his budget. And he and so anyhow, Joe Nicola from your neck of the woods out in the Independence area, he spoke up and was critical of the process, and he wanted to have more floor debate. Well, the thing is, there was floor debate, and you could make amendments to the budget. You just had to get 18 votes to pass them, like anything else. The amendments that Joe, I think some of his allies had, They just didn't have the votes. A couple of them, they tried to lower the Supreme Court salary to that of a state rep. A couple things like that, and they got voted down. Whether they were good ideas or bad ideas, you have to have 18 votes in the state Senate to enact any of them, right? Good or bad. So there was some pain and consternation along with some of those things. None of it really that big a deal, but I think David Wassinger appreciated Joe Nicola saying he didn't like the process. He wants a bigger role in the process. And so Wassinger kind of unleashed a 5-minute speech, part of it thanking the staff. And I mean, can you imagine being those staffers that got thanked by the time he was done? Didn't do them any favors. But he basically didn't like the process, and he's going to do rule changes. Well, the problem with that is the lieutenant has just as much ability to propose rule changes in the Missouri State Senate as Scott Faughn or Pete Mundo, which is to say none. And so part of it's just, and I'll tell you this, it came down to, I think Wassinger, what he really wanted was to be mentioned on the Pete Mundo show, which he is getting. But I think at the end of the day, the senators have two basic beefs. One, it is a bit of a struggle for David Wassinger to preside over the Senate. He has not mastered the rules yet. And to have a statewide job that has really only one responsibility, I think he is a very smart guy. I think folks would have appreciated before you start criticizing to actually learn the rules, and then he doesn't stay there very long. I mean, the senators are accustomed to Mike Kehoe and Mike Parson sitting in that dais and presiding over the Senate late into the night. David Wassinger stays there. Now, Thursday he stayed the whole time, but for the most part, he's only there for about an hour. It's like, I bet you there's some guys on the job site listening to Mundo in the morning right now. If you had a guy that popped in for an hour every other day or so throughout the week and popped back out, and then on Friday he had thoughts about how you could do your job better, I mean, that dude's getting locked in the porta potty, right? And I don't think here.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. That makes sense to me. Scott Faughn of the Missouri Times on KCMO. Now, we got to get into what is going on, if anything. We haven't spoken in a few weeks with you. Chiefs, Royals, legislative sessions wrapping up. What is new on either of these two teams and their future in the state of Missouri?
I have been saying for 3 years now, maybe longer, that I think the Royals are on a slow, tortured, painful walk to the Northland. I think they have decided to make this as awful on everybody as possible. I think they're constantly looking for a better deal around the corner. But I've never seen how it doesn't make the most financial sense for the Kansas City Royals to play their games in the Northland. With that huge area they have for development and development around the stadium, I don't know how you don't get around that. There's a sports commission getting established for Clay County. Jerry Nolte was walking the halls of the Capitol last week, and man, that Jerry Nolte is just a one-man wrecking crew. If you see Jerry, bet on Jerry to succeed at whatever he's doing. I think that's where that's heading. The Chiefs, I think their problem is no longer the state. I think the state has made it clear what they're willing to do and how they would go about doing that. But the local folks have to get on board. And there's, dysfunction in government matters. Dysfunction in local government matters more. And that county government is having a very hard time doing simple things. And if you can't do simple things, getting a tax on the ballot for the sports authority here in Kansas City to keep the Chiefs and renovate Arrowhead, they're going to have to get their act together is the next part of this.
Yeah, that is the next part of it. Is there any indication that the state is willing to step in and basically deal directly with the Chiefs and Jackson County be damned? Or Jackson County really has to basically hold up its end of the bargain and be a functioning county government to make any of this move forward?
100%. I think the state has made it clear what they're willing to do. I think they would have, look, the best scenario for this was to get the biggest Chiefs fan in the world, Mike Parson, on his way out of office to put together a package of development bonds and things. But frankly, the Chiefs are ready. The state has been ready, but you have to have that county sales tax in place. And right now, getting anything in place in Jackson County, it's a challenge. Now, I'll leave it up to folks that cover it every day to tell you whose fault it is or whatever. I just don't know. But I'll tell you this. It's not really the state that everybody's waiting on, and it's not really the Chiefs. On the Royals side, yes, I think you can point to where the Royals have been very indecisive and very challenging to deal with. In this situation, that's not what you can say fairly about the Chiefs. I think the state is prepared to step in for the Chiefs. I just think that, you're going to have Jackson County produce, or I don't think there's a next step forward until Jackson County can decide what it's willing to do and actually get it done.
Last thing in 30 seconds, is there a sense that, do you know if the Chiefs are kind of fed up with everything on the Missouri side, or are they willing to kind of make this thing work?
I think they're fed up with the Royals and trying to do something alongside them. I think there was a lot of indecisiveness. I don't think they'd ever say this, but until the deal is totally broken, but I think they're getting a little frustrated dealing with Jackson County.
Yeah. Oh, that's understandable. Scott,
as any rational person would be.
I mean, seriously, as anybody with 2 ears, 2 eyes, and functioning senses would as well. You're right. Hey, man, I appreciate you, Scott. Thanks so much.
Yes, sir. Talk to you later, bud.
See ya. Scott Faughn, Missouri Times on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM.